There's a certain degree of pressure attached to experiencing a game, or really a work of art in general, with the greatest of all time label. This sort of mythical title reserved for games that transcend just one individual's favorites due to some sort of important, widely recognized achievement. Of course, this attempt at a collective canon isn't going to match the taste of every individual, and you are inevitably going to go against the grain on several greatest games of all time TM. Link to the Past's role in defining the mechanical skeleton of a Zelda isn't nearly as impressive to me as the contributions of the two more thematically ambitious Zeldas that follow it. Braid is a completely average puzzle platformer that just so happens to be created by the easiest human being to dunk on. And the day I say Castlevania 4 is anywhere near the best Castlevania game is the day that you realize I've been killed and replaced by an imposter. It's healthy to disagree with this kind of consensus, but at the same time, there's a feeling of missing out when that does happen. A feeling that this seemingly important pillar of the medium is something you don't get. I bring this up because Mother 3 is probably the game that I felt the most of this greatest game of all time TM pressure while playing. While it isn't included on, say, Wikipedia's list of games considered the best, Mother 3's connection to another game with more formal recognition and its mythologized lack of an English release give it a similar, albeit more colloquial, status to the games on that list. Not counting Smash Bros., my first exposure to Mother 3 was a list of the saddest video game moments where the whole game, not just any individual moment from it, was placed at number 1. And the ensuing segments hyping up of how dark and fucked up the game is perfectly encapsulates how it's discussed online. Not only does it get the usual treatment that Nintendo games with slightly dark content receive, with other examples including the N64 Zeldas, Metroid Fusion, or Super Paper Mario, but its aforementioned lack of an English release adds to this. The game supposedly being so dark it couldn't be brought overseas simply makes for a far more exciting story than the realistic explanation of Nintendo not thinking it would have enough sales to justify the additional money that localizing it would take. Because of the specific mystique attached to Mother 3, I struggle to think of other games that I knew as much about upon going in. The deaths of Hinawa and Klaus from that initial exposure to it. Highly praised mechanics like rhythm combos and rolling health. The Tane Tane Island drug trip. All the music samples used. The game's anti-capitalist commentary. Every possible position on the controversy surrounding its LGBT rap. You get the idea. When I finally decided to play Mother 3 due to being curious about the veracity of the quirky Earthbound-inspired indie RPG label for certain games, it was in 2023. Over a decade since I first heard about the game. So that puts into perspective the sheer amount of time I've had to just find things out about the game through osmosis without actually playing it. When I first booted up the game on its anniversary due to that date just incidentally happening to coincide with my quirky Earthbound-inspired RPGs marathon, something felt strange. I could recognize the strength of its mechanical systems and what it's setting up narratively, but I wasn't personally gelling with the game on the same level that so many players before me had. I initially shook this off as me being way too early and needing to get to the truly special moments, but then I got to the reveal of Hinawa's death. The fit of rage that Flint burst into upon hearing the news and the accompanying detail of him being the first human being to have ever been placed in Tazmily prison are things that I saw fans of the game talk to death about beforehand and for good reason. I felt nothing upon seeing this happen. By that point, I thought my opinion on Mother 3 was settled. It was a game that almost certainly had merit, but could never truly be one of my favorites because I had already experienced too much of it secondhand. I was fully ready to nod along to a child casting a lightning spell on himself and say, yeah, okay, I get this, 4 stars unbacklogged, before moving on to the next game. But then I got to an area called Murky Cave that you could be forgiven for completely forgetting about. No significant story events occur within it, the aesthetics are your standard fare for an RPG cave, and it's short enough that you'll more often than not be done with it before you know it. However, there is exactly one detail that separates Murky Cave from any other area in the game. Flint enters this cave accompanied by Alec, Hinawa's father, who almost immediately tells him to relax in what is clearly an attempt to help him deal with the death of his spouse. What follows is Alec repeatedly halting the game to give Flint directions or try to cheer him up with jokes in ways that clearly have good intentions but only end up being intrusive. And then something started to click with me. Going to be very vague about this so as not to risk getting way too heavy for a video about a game series primarily enjoyed by people who post pictures of the 4 most recent children's movies with the caption animation and cinema, but I have dealt with significant mental health issues for what feels like most of my life. I bring this up because interactions with people who have even the faintest idea of what you're dealing with on this front come with this element of second guessing. You're wondering if any given act of kindness they show to you, no matter how small, is them being genuine or them just feeling like they have to do it out of obligation. And while Flint's grief over Hanoa's death isn't exactly one-to-one with what I personally deal with, the trek through Murky Cave truly reflects that headspace of second-guessing. Like, Alec is clearly trying to help Flint, but the intrusive nature of his attempts make you doubt if he's really being sincere there. When he's giving Flint directions, he's telling you how to do something you can so easily figure out for yourself, and he's even completely wrong at one point. It feels infantilizing, as if he's doubting your ability to show even the most basic form of autonomy, and that's what it often feels like to try to open up about mental issues. So after this point of the game, everything about Mother 3 suddenly fell into place for me. The boss fight against the Mecha Drago at the end of the chapter was this brutal slugfest where the inherent limitations on what you can do with just one party member made it feel more like an active raid than a carefully crafted mechanical challenge. Chapter 2, which is not anywhere near my favorite chapter in the game, mind you, was a fun adventure that made me enticed to see what's going to happen next. And by Chapter 3, the one where you play as a monkey working a shitty 9-to-5 job, I had no doubts that this was going to become one of my favorite games ever made. Online, there's this tendency to treat art in this emotionally detached manner where it is a puzzle with a single definitive answer. And while I can sympathize with wanting to go into a piece of art knowing as little as possible, I feel like the spoiler culture we've gotten into where we're afraid knowing too much about something will completely ruin it reflects a view of art as strings of objective information rather than manifestations of human emotions. I can actively seek out every little detail of Mother 3 without actually playing it, and I'll never truly get what it's like because there's so much more to it or any given work of art than just the chronological sequence of events that happens in it. Hell, you can even say that Mother 3 touches upon this shallow view of art because that's just how Porky views the events of Earthbound. To some extent, I struggle with a similar kind of emotional detachment where my view of art is more often through the lens of this is an interesting emotion to try to convey than it is through the lens of this is an interesting emotion to have felt. But resonating with this completely inconsequential cave area is one of those special times where I can say that I felt something from a work of art as opposed to merely understanding what it was trying to make me feel. The common view of not just Mother 3 but the series as a whole as, ooh, look how much dark and fucked up stuff happens in this, only ends up selling it short. Pointing at Gygus Klaus or any other big shocking moment cannot truly begin to articulate what the series accomplishes as 3 of the most truly human games in existence.